Hello everyone and welcome to the new Program Coordinator Orientation for Program Assessment. From the Office of Institutional Effectiveness, we'd like to thank you for your commitment to continuous improvement by being the Program Coordinator and completing these program assessments annually. My name is Claire Blackwell. I'm an Institutional Assessment Coordinator in the Office of Institutional Effectiveness. You can contact me at any time using my email, or you can call me on my phone number, or see me in my office in the International Center 521, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Today we're going to be running through a couple assessment-related topics, such as what is assessment, why do we do assessment, the various components of assessment, and then specific parts of the assessment report from the University of Southern Mississippi. We'll also talk about WEAVE, our assessment accreditation platform, and then we'll go over a few assessment resources. So what is assessment? Assessment is the systematic collection of information about student learning, and we use that information to make data-driven decisions that affect student learning. So this process includes setting goals, gathering information related to those goals, enacting change based on the analysis of that information, and then reflecting on the changes that we made. To the right, you can see an assessment cycle diagram. So why do we use assessment? In short, we want to know that our students are learning what we want them to actually know. And this information is not always reflected in grades. So for example, when we think about whole projects or whole course grades, oftentimes it's not only the content that we're basing the grade on. So for a paper, you might also include things like spelling and grammar in their grade. Or if they submit an late assignment, you might take off a letter grade in that. For whole course grades, that's a combination of assignments that might not be all related to that one student learning outcome. Additionally, things like attendance could be counted in that grade. So as you can see, it's important that we use those student learning outcomes to get at specific things, specific outcomes for students. Next, we also do assessment for our stakeholders, and then for institutional accreditation, SAC-COC, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, has a set of standards that we have to abide by to be accredited by them. And one of those standards is 8.2.8. And it says that the institution identifies expected outcomes, we assess the extent to which we achieve these outcomes, and then we provide evidence of seeking improvement based on the analysis of those results. And this is for the student learning outcomes for each of our educational programs. Some justification behind this standard, they say that effective institutions focus on continuous improvement for educational programs. So again, at the heart of assessment is this focus on continuous improvement for the benefit of our students. Next, we'll talk about some various assessment components. These include outcomes, measures, targets, findings, the analysis of these findings, action plans, and closing the loop statements. Student learning outcomes, or SLOs, are what we want our students to be able to know, think, or do upon completing our program. This is often written in the format, students will be able to ... So, for an example, students will demonstrate competence in assessment and diagnosis of mental disorders and interpersonal and intrapersonal issues. Another example is students will apply legal and ethical principles to clinical practice. So again, these are statements that the student will be able to know, think, or do once they graduate or finish the program. For the USM assessment report, we require that each program have 4 student learning outcomes. If you are completing a report for a certificate or a minor, you only need to have 2 student learning outcomes. It's important to note too that if you are completing a program level report for a program that has multiple emphasis areas, and all these emphasis areas are being captured in a single report, that you have additional SLOs for each emphasis area. So for example, you might have 3 or 4 student learning outcomes that apply to all emphasis areas, and then you would have an additional 1 student learning outcome per emphasis area. And you would make note in the report that that student learning outcome is for that specific emphasis area. Next, we have measures. So this is going to be how we actually determine that the outcome is met using evidence and our methodology. These measures can be direct or indirect. So for direct measures, these are direct evaluations of student work, and it's students demonstrating they can know or do. So some examples of this are exams or specific exam questions, papers, presentations, performances, standardized tests, licensure exams, portfolios, or internship evaluations. Again, overall course grades cannot be used as measures because they don't accurately capture student learning outcomes. Indirect measures are only a reflection on student learning, so they often ask students how they feel about what they learned. An example of this is surveys or interviews with students. For the USF assessment report, you will need to have 2 measures per student learning outcome for programs. At least one of these measures needs to be direct. You can always have additional measures, but you must have 2 with 1 direct measure. If you're completing a report for certificate or minor, you only need 1 measure, but it has to be direct. Next, we have our targets. So this is our benchmark, standard, criteria, or goal. And it's clear, specific, and meaningful. So an example of a target would be 70% of students enrolled in the course will earn a satisfactory 3 out of 5 or greater on the category of the rubric that evaluates critical analysis skills. So as you can see, this target is very specific. We know the exact percentage of students who you want to be able to achieve this goal. We know what score they will need, a 3 out of 5. We know that it's satisfactory or greater. And we know that this is coming from the rubric that is specific to critical analysis skills. For our assessment report, you must have 1 target per measure. Again, you can have additional targets, but you need at least 1. Once you gather the assessment data, you will report this in the findings sections. So these are the results. Each measure should have findings reported. There is an exception to this where if a course is only taught once every other year, then you may put that the findings were not reported due to this. However, you must have findings at least every other year for that measure. Additionally, you cannot have all measures be not reported this year. You need to have some sort of data to analyze every single report or year. If for some reason you don't have data to report every year, then the measures need to be changed to reflect student learning every year. So that might mean choosing a different course or a different project to measure student learning. Additionally, the finding statements should always mirror the targets and language. So if you look at the example below, it's a mirror of the example we looked at for the targets. So in this case, 80% or 20 out of 25 students enrolled in the course, spring 2022, online, earned a satisfactory 3 out of 5 or greater on the category of the rubric that evaluates critical analysis skills. You'll note that these findings are very specific. They include sample size, location or mode of delivery, and semester or semesters the data are from. It's important to include the sample size to give context to the data, the location and mode of delivery if you're a program that has 2 modes of delivery, such as Hattiesburg and online. And then for semester or semesters, you need to designate which semester, fall, spring, or summer, or intersession the data are from. The analysis of findings is a reflection on the findings for the criteria for success. So did the students meet the target? If they did not meet the target, what can be done to improve student learning? What actions can faculty or the program take to improve student learning? If the target was met, what actions led to the students meeting the target? Was an action plan implemented, and did that lead to improved results? Additionally, what challenges still remain, or what do students still struggle with, even when the target is met? And then if the target has been met consistently, do new targets or measures need to be chosen? For the annual report, the analysis and findings should be included for each finding that is given. Stating the target was met and no further action is needed is not an acceptable analysis. Met and not met target. It is acceptable to not meet a target. Remember, the goal of assessment is continuous improvement. So this means that you're likely to not meet your targets, all of them, every year. You want to have a target that is a goal. It's achievable, but still a goal. So you want to be able to grow and improve. And to do this, you need to set a target that is rigorous enough that you have a challenge to meet it. If a target has been sufficiently met, so you might have been 2 or 3 years with this target being met, or your students might be greatly exceeding the target, and then it's time to pick a new target, or possibly measure an outcome depending on the situation. So for example, if you have your target set at 70% of students, and 95% of students are exceeding this target, then maybe it's time to set a target of 97%, and then work to get those other 2% of students to meet that goal. Action plans. These are formal, organized activities undertaken to achieve the outcomes or improve the program or student learning. These action plans may include changes to the curriculum or policies, faculty development, or changes to planning and funding. When designing action plans, it's important to make sure they're SMART. So you need to be specific with who will undertake the action plan, what faculty members will report to the school, will enact these changes, what will be done. Will it be done for all modes, or just at Hattiesburg campus, or just online campus? When will it happen? And then back to why. So connect this back to a student learning outcome or some data of why you're making this change. It's important that these are measurable, that at the end you're able to collect additional data and refer back to previous data and compare. And then time for the action plan. When would this action plan be completed? Will it be completed in another year? Will it be completed by a specific semester? It's important to mention this. If for some reason you don't meet the time that you have set, the date, you can always go back and change it and extend it. But it's good to set a goal as far as time goes. For the assessment plan, action plans are needed every other year or if a target is not met. So, if all your targets are met every year, you still need an action plan every other year to show continuous improvement. Because remember, the goal of assessment and what we're required to show for accreditation standards is that we're working towards continuous improvement. If a target is not met, you will need an action plan to show that you're working towards meeting that target. If you already have an action plan established for a target that is not met, you do not need to create another action plan in addition to your previous one that's in progress. As long as you have an action plan focusing on students meeting that target, then that's fine. You just need an action plan that's in progress at some point every other year. Closing the loop. So once the action plan is complete, you need to reflect on that action plan and decide if the action plan was successful. So did the action plan actually lead to an improvement in student learning? Did the action plan end up resulting in what you originally wanted it to? This should be backed by data, so you should be comparing data for the new assessment report and compare it to the old one when the action plan was first formed to see if any changes have been made. Sometimes action plans don't result in the intended outcomes, and that's okay. That should also be stated in this section. Additionally, in the closing the loop section, if you have an action plan that was started but never finished, and it is time to terminate that action plan due to either funding, a change in faculty, any number of things, you need to state that this action plan is no longer active and is being terminated without being complete in this section. For the assessment report, the closing the loop statement is required for every completed action plan. If no action plans were completed for the year, you just need to include a statement that there are no completed action plans. But again, every completed or terminated action plan needs a closing the loop statement. These are references for the above slides in case you would like to do any further reading on assessment. Now we'll get into some specifics for USM reporting. So the assessment components we talked about earlier are generally found in all assessment reporting throughout all universities. But for USM, we do a couple specific things differently. For us, when we talk about assessment reporting, we talk about the assessment plan and then the annual reporting portion of it. So the assessment plan is the program description, outcomes, measures, and targets. Program description we'll talk about shortly. The these program descriptions, outcomes, measures, and targets roll over annually. So every year, the report project that you will work in is duplicated. And so this duplicates with outcomes, measures, targets, so they do not have to be re-entered every year. These will mainly stay the same and may change every few years, but will likely not be changed every year. The annual reporting section are sections that will have to be entered every year for the report to be considered complete. These include the findings, the analysis, the action plans, closing the loop, and then also the annual program and action plan analysis document. We provide you this document, which you will fill out and upload as a project attachment with the report. So let's talk some specifics about these sections that are unique to USM. The program description is a summary of the program that provides context to a reviewer. This includes the mission or purpose of the program, or certificate or minor, the specific skills, knowledge, and career opportunities students gain from the program, the number of hours that are required. For programs, we need to include which hours are program specific, and then where the program or certificate or minor is offered, such as the Hattiesburg Gold Park or online campus. Additionally, you may include information such as student status, like part-time or full-time. This is especially important if you have a degree in which most students are part-time, non-traditional students. Additionally, you may want to include how many years or semesters it takes to obtain this degree, certificate, or minor, and any opportunities for graduate school for those that are undergraduate level programs, or for their graduate level, if this is a term of a degree. The annual action plan and analysis document is a Word document that is sent to you annually. You will include overall and current action plans, a closing the loop statement, the program analysis, and the program review section. All programs, minors, and certificates should complete all sections of the document. For the current action plan section, you will update on any in progress or ongoing action plans. This may include new action plans that were just developed, or action plans that were developed in previous years, which are still in progress. You should include what actions have already been implemented, what actions are left to implement, when the action plan might be complete, and any changes that you've noticed thus far for those action plans that are currently in progress. Next is the closing the loop statement. So for any action plans that have been completed since the last report, we'll provide an update on them here. It's important to note that once an action plan has had a closing the loop statement, it can be removed from the report and does not need to be repeated in additional reports. The program level analysis provides an overview of the strengths and weaknesses of students for the program. This provides any additional context that is needed, such as program-wide changes. This often happens if the program underwent large-scale curriculum changes that added a mode of delivery, such as online, or if there's any other notable changes that might impact the assessment results. It's important that this section does not repeat information that is found in other sections of the report. This can include other sections of this analysis document or the WEAVE report itself. Finally, we have the program review, or program inventory review. This is a look at the enrollment and graduation data for the past 3 years. And this information comes from the IR website, and we'll talk about how to obtain this data shortly. It's important that for the enrollment and graduation data, you are including every emphasis area, but that this is disaggregated. This section will also include an analysis of the enrollment and graduation trends, and it may also include some action plans that are specific to enrollment and graduation rates. You should also, in this section, refer to the information that was sent to you around January of 2024, that Helio Campus screenshot. This is a screenshot from the program review section of the annual analysis document. You can see that you list any active program names or inactive program names that are included for this analysis. So for example, if your program underwent significant curriculum changes, you might have renamed the program, in which case you have inactive programs that students may be going through teach out that you would include here, as well as new active program names. For the graduation and enrollment data, if you have multiple emphasis areas, then you can just add another column to this table and provide that information there. Now we'll take a look at the IR website and how to actually obtain the data for this analysis document. So if we go to the Office of Institutional Research website, you can see that there is an Institutional Data tab. If you click on it, it'll bring you to this page, and if you scroll down, you will find these three different tiles here. This first one, Faculty and Staff Data Access, is where you can find this information. This data is available to all faculty and staff on campus, and you do not need a specific license to access this data. I have already been logged in, but if you need to log in, just use your stored credentials, the password and username. Once you're here, scroll down to the tile Program Review. Once you click on it, you'll see these three bullet points. You'll want to click the first one, 3-year program trends. This workbook consists of all active and inactive programs that we have. You may want to filter by college or school to find your specific program. Here, these A's and I's, the active and inactive for the programs. The information you'll be looking for is located in these enrollment sections and then these reported graduate sections. It's important to note that there's also primary and secondary enrollments. Primary enrollment is if a student has this plan as their primary major. Some students are dual majors, and if their second major is the program, they're listed as secondary enrollments. For the purpose of this assessment report, you can combine primary and secondary enrollments together and just report them as one number. You should be able to match the data listed in the rows of the table we give you with these specific titles. Next, we'll be talking about WEAVE. WEAVE is our accreditation platform for assessment for the University of Southern Mississippi. If you are new to WEAVE, you should receive a WEAVE login email. This login email will expire after 7 days, so if that does happen, please just email me and I can send you another one. So once you click on the link to that login email, it'll take you to the WEAVE login page. WEAVE will automatically log you in with your email based on the institutional abbreviation, so there is no need to create a username or password at any time. To log in, just go to Access WEAVE using your institution sign-on, and then enter USM. It does not matter, is this capitalized or not capitalized, and then hit Continue. WEAVE will open to a dashboard page where you can see some general statistics on your projects. I have access to all projects, so you can see I have quite a large number of project data available to me. To find your specific project or program, click on the Project section at the top of the page. It'll bring you to all projects that you have access to. You can see here, you can filter by project year, or you can filter by name of the project. You'll see this is the project title, the last date it was modified, the status of the report, so if the report has been started or if it is finished, the reporting period it is from, and then the type. You do not have to worry about type, that is internal WEAVE metric and does not concern the assessment report. The reporting period for program level assessment is always going to be under PLA and then the year. So for this year, you'll be looking under PLA 2023 to 2024. Again, these can be found in this reporting period section when looking for your project. To access the project, click on the name. When the WEAVE report opens, sometimes it is listed in outline view. This is where these colored boxes appear. You cannot work in outline view, as sometimes WEAVE deletes the information you put here. To effectively work the WEAVE report, you need to collapse this outline view. To do so, hit this arrow and line button here. Once the project has collapsed the outline view, you will now be able to see the program description and summary, as well as the outcome types and outcomes. Starting at the top of the page, you can see the name of the project, the year, the view, which is fine to just leave it in assessment, and then the status of the project, which you can change manually to in progress, internal review, or complete. You should change it to in progress when you are working on the report, internal review, if you will have a director review report, and then the director can change the status to complete once the report has been reviewed. To edit any of the information on Weave, you would click on the box. It should be noted that when copying and pasting into the boxes, sometimes the format changes. It is important to check the formatting for typos, as well as grammatical and spelling issues. For all program certificates and minors, you should have hours, mode of delivery, and location listed in this program description. When we get to the assessment plan, you will see the outcome type box. The outcome type should be listed as student learning outcomes. You can see when I uncollapse this section using this arrow, you can see the outcomes as well. Additional outcomes can always be added using the plus button. If you need to delete an outcome, you can hit the three dots and hit delete. It should be noted that any deletions in Weave cannot be undone. Weave saves automatically and has no undo or redo button. It is important when entering information that you also store this information somewhere else as well, in case Weave does not save. You will need a strong connection to the internet, and if this internet connection wavers, it may not save your report. For student learning outcomes, you should put SLO and the number, followed by the student learning outcome. Please leave the description blank. The next section you see is the action plans, but we'll come back to this a bit later. Next, we have the measures. For here, you will put a short abbreviation of the measure name, such as Weave Access for me, and then a short description of the measure. This description should include enough information to give an outside reviewer a good understanding of how this measure is being evaluated. Next, we have the target section. You will leave this description portion blank. Then you will enter the target in the target box. Next, we have the findings section, and then the analysis. Once the findings and analysis have been entered, you can change the status to met, not met. If you have more than one target, you can change it to partially met, or if it's not reported, you can change it to not reported this period. You'll notice here that there's a view action plan section. If you click on it, it will show the action plan I've already entered earlier. To enter an action plan, you will have to scroll up, back to the outcome, and next to action plan there will be a plus sign. Once you hit that, you will be able to type in the description the action plan. Alternatively, you can also break the action plan down into multiple action items and enter each item individually here. You do not need to worry about a specific budget source or amount. You will need to include a due date and a status of the overall action plan. I listed here that it's connected to one of my measures. If you end up using these action item boxes, you can list what measure it's connected to in the description, leave the budget source blank, and then list those action items. Each action item should also have a due date, preferably, and you can set the status of the action item as well. Scrolling down, we can come to outcome type 2. Again, this was made by clicking the plus button on the side of outcome type 1. This section is program objectives for those with program level projects. Program objectives are student achievement measures. These are always focused on things like job placement or graduation. Here, you can see I just listed job placement as the title and did not enter a description. Again, for measure, there is a short description title and then the description of that measure. Then I would just enter the target, finding, and analysis as usual. At the bottom of the page, you'll see the project attachment section. This is where you will attach the annual program and action plan analysis document and other supporting documentation such as rubrics. You can either click and browse for the file, or you can drag and drop the file there. Additionally, you can always remove a file by hitting the three dots and selecting delete. You can also download the file or simply view it. Now let's take a look at the other resources we have for the Institutional Effectiveness website. So we have multiple pages on our website, some for general assessment and some specific to academic assessment. So when we look at our assessment page, you can see here that we have it split out into academic, unit, and centered assessment. For program coordinators, you're going to want to look under academic assessment for your materials. But while we're here, let's take a look at the rest of this page. You can see that we list the SAC-COC standards that are affiliated with our office and accreditation. At the bottom of the page, you'll see additional resources, general resources for assessment, as well as some professional development opportunities from outside affiliations. If you click on academic assessment, you'll be linked to this page. You'll see at the top the due date for the next upcoming report. If you keep scrolling, you'll see assessment, academic assessment broken down by area, such as undergraduate program level, graduate program level, and GEC assessment. All assessment reports are reviewed by the undergraduate and graduate council, and they're done on a biannual basis. The last sentence of these paragraphs will give you an idea of when the committee will review the next cycle of schools. So for example, in rotation year 1, accountancy will be reviewed, and this will happen in year 2024 to 2025. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see additional information here, such as program level instructions and guidelines. This section is currently under construction. By the time you watch this video, the new instruction should be uploaded here. You'll notice additionally there is this compliance rubric that is attached. You can use this rubric as a self-grading tool to make sure that your report will be compliant with SAC-COC Standard 8.2.a. Additionally, you can see the same information for the certificate and minors with the program level assessment, instructions, and guidelines. We also have some additional assessment resources for academic assessment here, including some faculty first week presentations that were done in the past. Finally, we have assessment showcase booklets. These are examples from programs from USM from past assessment years. You can get a good idea of what good outcomes, measures, targets, action plans, and other sections look like from actual programs on campus. Thank you for taking the time to go through this orientation today. If you have any questions, please reach out to me at claire.blackwell@usm.edu. Thank you and have a good rest of the day.